Somewhere along the way, I acquired the name The Big Easy Chef. I think I got that name because I'm big on making stuff easy and good. Maybe I should be the Big Easy Good Chef. Hello everybody, I'm the Big Easy Chef. I love the smell of bread being baked in the oven. I always think when that comes out of the oven, I want a slice of that when it's warm, some butter melted on there. Oh yeah, you know that's good. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to bake what I like to call PWB, plain white bread. If you follow the recipe exactly the way I make it, you'll end up with 2 loaves of bread that's light and fluffy. Have you ever taken a close look at a slice of bread? Let's look at one right now. Wow, that is a really large slice of bread. If you look at it close up, the brown part on the outside, that's what's known as the crust. The white part in the middle, that's the crumb. Let's look at the crumb a little bit close. You can see that the crumb's made up of a lot of small holes. This is the role the yeast played in the making of the bread. Yeast plays a really important role in the baking of bread. It's sort of the heart of the bread. If you understand about yeast, your bread will come out perfect every single time. And well, if you don't understand about yeast, and maybe you've had this happen before, you will end up with, well, does this look familiar? Here's a little demonstration about yeast. I have 2 containers. In the first container, I'm adding 1/2 cup of cool water, 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast, 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm covering the container with clear plastic wrap. In the second container, I'm adding 1/2 cup of water, which is 110 degrees, 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast, and 1 teaspoon of sugar. I'm also covering this container with clear plastic wrap. I'm going to allow them to set for an hour. Okay, now an hour's passed. You can see in the first container, with the cool water, salt, and yeast, nothing much has happened. In the second container, with the warm water, yeast and sugar, there's a lot going on. You can see the yeast is starting to make bubbles. And if you remember from our giant slice of bread, the crumb was made up of bubbles. So it's important to have your yeast working and making these bubbles during the process. The more bubbles you have, the more air is trapped inside of your bread, making it lighter and fluffier. So now you probably know more about yeast than you ever wanted to know. When you get ready to start baking your bread, start out with a bowl that you're going to mix the dough in, and put water in there that's 120 degrees. Now you're not going to use this water to mix the dough with. You're just going to use it to warm up the bowl, bring it up to a nice temperature. Empty out that water, then put water in that's 110 degrees. You can use a thermometer to check the temperature of the water, and that's like the perfect temperature for yeast. It loves to be at 110. Then you'll want to put your yeast in there. Add your sugar. Sugar is like the favoriteest food for yeast. Add your powdered milk. Add your vital wheat gluten. Add your flour. Now your flour is going to set on top of the yeast in there in its warm, moist environment with all that food. So it's going to get busy doing, you know, the kind of stuff yeast does. Add your unsalted butter, and then add your salt. Now, this is going to surprise you a little bit, but salt and yeast, not good friends. They're like the Hatfields and the McCoys. So you want to wait till the last minute to put the salt in there. Don't forget to add it. Then you want to start your mixing, as you'll see in the video. Now, you don't need to try and write down the recipe. It'll be posted at the end of the video, along with complete instructions, and for the people using metrics, there'll be a metric conversion chart so you could kick back, enjoy the video. So let's see what's shaking and get to baking. Remember, before you start handling any food, it's very important to handle the food in a safe manner. One of the first rules is to wash your hands with plenty of soap and warm water. You know, you can always sing the happy birthday song while washing your hands. This way, you'll know you've washed your hands long enough to get any germs or bacteria off of them. Also, be aware when raw meat, poultry, or fish come in contact with any surface or utensil, you'll need to clean them before introducing any new food to the surface or utensil. Clean with plenty of hot soapy water. Also, you can add 1 tablespoon of unscented liquid household bleach to a gallon of water. This will sanitize surfaces and utensils. You can find more information on the safe handling of food at usda.gov. Hey, now let's get started on that recipe. Rinse the mixing bowl with water that's 120 degrees. You're just warming up the bowl with this water. You're not going to mix anything with this water. You can check the temperature of the water using a thermometer. Rinse the water around in the bowl, then empty out the water. Now add 3 cups of water that's 110 degrees to the bowl. Use the thermometer to check the temperature of the water. So now add your yeast to the water. You will start a predictable window of time for the activation of your yeast. Now add 1/3 cup of sugar. Yeast loves to eat sugar. I guess it has a sweet tooth. Now add 1/3 cup of powdered milk, 1/2 cup of vital wheat gluten, 5½ cups of all-purpose flour. Now you can add 1/4 cup of unsalted butter. Now it's time for the salt. Now, as you may remember from our little class on yeast, salt and yeast are not friends. This is why you're adding the salt at the last, before mixing the dough. Okay, now that you put the salt in there, it's time to start mixing the dough. Place the dough hook on the mixer and mix the dough for 12 minutes on the lowest setting. The dough hook on the mixer goes round and round, round and round. Oh well, you get the idea. Around 4 minutes of mixing, check the dough to see if it needs more water or flour. The dough should be pretty wet, pulling away from the sides of the mixer. Let me use a little of my video magic to slow down the mixer, as I don't have that slow of a speed on my mixer. Now, as you can see, the dough is pulling away from the bowl. I had to add less than 1/4 cup of warm water to the dough, as it was a little on the dry side. After the dough has mixed for 12 minutes, stop the mixer, remove the dough hook. Now, cover the bread with a towel. Move the dough to a warm, draft-free spot and let the dough rise. I found that a good spot for the dough to rise is on top of the stove. You have to be careful about setting the dough on top of the stove with a towel on it, as it could be a fire danger. And if you're concerned about that, another good place to place the dough is on top of the refrigerator. It's a good, draft-free, warm place. It takes about an hour for the dough to rise. Check on the dough often. If you watch real careful, now you have to watch. Poof! The dough has risen. I would think that this is a dough miracle. It's easy to tell that the dough has risen enough. When I poke my finger into the dough, it doesn't spring back. It wants to collapse onto its own self. This tells me the dough has risen and is ready to form into loaves. After the dough has risen, I turn the dough out onto a well-floured board. I divide the dough into half. I place 1/2 back into the bowl, and with the other half I knead it a little, not that much. You can see just how nice the dough is. It isn't that dry, and it's very soft and pliable. It's easy to work with. I'm forming it so it will fit into the loaf pan. Once the dough is formed, I spray the loaf pan with some cooking spray. I then put the dough into the loaf pan and shape it a little more. I put a towel over the pan and place it back on the stove top. I do the same with the second loaf. Allow the dough to rise for about an hour. Check on it during that time to see how much progress it's making. So again, if you watch real close, give it some time. Now look close. Poof! The dough has risen. I would say this is a dough miracle for sure. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees. Place the loaves into the oven where they'll bake for 35 minutes. When the bread is finished baking, take it out and immediately remove it from the pans. Place them on a cooling rack and allow them to cool for 3 hours before slicing. You can see that this bread came out just perfect. Golden brown, light and fluffy. I know it's hard to wait 3 hours when your whole house has this wonderful smell of fresh baked bread. Sometimes I guess it's okay to slice some. I have this slicer that helps me keep the slices uniform. I like using an electric knife, and once the bread is sliced, I store it in a jumbo zipper bag. You can keep one loaf for eating, and you can freeze the second loaf, as this bread freezes very well. Now that you know how to make what I like to call PWB, plain white bread, I hope you'll try baking some soon. Remember what they say, you are what you eat. So take it easy on that ham and those chickens. Until next time, I'm the Big Easy Chef.